Okay, the horror stuff of 2023 is out of the way. Now it's time to do the non-horror stuff. We're gonna do the best and the worst, starting with the best. So anyway, top 10 best non-horror movies of 2023. Let's go. What's up, guys? You know I'm a horror fan, but I also just love great movies in general, and there were a lot of them this year, actually. I just sat down, went through my list, and I'm gonna give you two lists. And much like the worst list for horror, I was able to only pull about 8, I guess, tried and true stinkers, at least in my opinion. So we'll get there once we get to the worst list. Also, guys, be sure to check out my end of year playlist, where I have all of my my list, not just for this year, but for previous years. And you can kind of catch up on what I thought of movies from the past. But anyway, let's get into the best. I'm gonna give you 2 honorable mentions. First honorable mention is going to be Dumb Money. This was a really educational, interesting movie about a situation that happened not too long ago. A couple years ago, I think, you know, the whole GameStop deal. And when, you know, power of the people, this guy who has a YouTube channel, he would talk about stocks and whatnot, and he liked the stock for GameStop, but he saw that there was some bullying from, you know, the Wall Street types. And let me just say, I'm no like accountant, no expert at this stuff, but yeah, I mean, you got Paul Dano. You can't go wrong with Paul Dano. He's one of the finest actors working today. We remember him last year when he played the Riddler in the Batman. He was phenomenal in that. He's phenomenal in everything, but he can play a lot of different types of characters too. He's a chameleon, and he was great in this role, but it was also just a very interesting story. You always like to see the little guy knock down the big guy, right? Next honorable mention, I'm gonna give it to Creed 3. And boy, I have a history with this movie. If you remember, I was actually making videos about the whole Stallone drama and all that, and I got so passionate about it at one point, you know, in the beginning of it, I said I'm not gonna watch Creed 3. But then I kind of woke up and was like, well, who the hell am I? Why am I saying that stupid shit? They're just movies at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm always going to be Team Stallone. Stallone is my idol, but I haven't walked in Michael B. Jordan's shoes, and you know, I don't know those people. So I watched the movie. It's a beautifully shot movie. I still think it's one of my least favorite of the Rocky saga. But, you know, being fair, it's definitely better than like Rocky 5. But for the year, I think it was a really good movie. And Jonathan Majors, wow, just today, the news came out that he was found guilty, which is crazy because he was really great in this role. He's a very talented actor, and it's a shame, and I hope he gets the help he needs, and I hope he rises above it, and, you know, I believe in second chances. So we'll see what happens, but it was a treat seeing him as this character, this really conflicted, troubled character in this role. You know, you can get into the logistics of it and how he was able to get a, you know, a heavyweight champion title fight so quick. In the real world, that probably wouldn't happen. And as far as like the final fight goes, I do appreciate that Michael B. Jordan tried some different things. Hell, even Stallone tried different things with the Rocky movies in the final fights, because you don't want the same thing every time. But it was cool that he was like infusing like anime and other genres into this. Really kind of getting psychological with the whole final fight too. So Creed 3, still a decent movie. Okay, jumping into the top 10, and let me tell you, every single one of these movies are firing on all cylinders. Like, this is one of the most stacked top 10 lists I think I've probably seen since I started doing these back in 2015, I think. So number 10 is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Had a freaking blast with this movie. It came out the week before Barbenheimer. And boy, it's a shame, because this movie should have had legs, and it should have done a lot better at the box office. But I think Mission Impossible is sort of a niche Hollywood blockbuster franchise. And I think one of the problems with the franchise is you can get a lot of the movies confused because they're all very similar. And, you know, you could say the same thing about this movie, but on its own, when you watch this movie, boy, it is an action feast. And to make matters even better, you know, Mr. Tom Cruise is doing most of his own stunts, and he always tries to up himself with every movie. I mean, one of the movies he's hanging from a freaking, I think it's like a C5 or C-130. Crazy shit. Had some really fun action set pieces in here. I love the one where he's handcuffed to the woman in the car and they're constantly having to like shift gears, and you move over here, you move over here, and just this tiny little car reminded me of like the little car in Bourne Identity. What a thrill ride of a movie. And I can't wait for part 2, Dead Reckoning part 2. Number 9 is one I just watched, May, December. And this is the one with Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman, and I love a good character study. I don't know if this movie is actually based on a true story, but I know the story within it, you know, has happened, where you had a teacher marrying a very young student. That stuff has actually happened. So maybe they took this idea and made it into a story. And really, the story here is that Natalie Portman, she's an actress. And you know, some actors, they take the craft so seriously, especially like our top paid actors. And they want to get to know a character that they're playing. And so what if you had an actor, you know, in this case, Natalie Portman, actress, and she took it to like crazy levels to where she's completely narcissistic and she doesn't really care about the lives that she's affecting because she just wants to get the role right. And this movie took you through that entire process. And it was an interesting study because you could look at this as Julianne Moore could be the main character of this movie. Just the thought of a person like her taking advantage of a child, and you know they end up getting married. And you could focus on just something like that in the movie, tell that story. But I like how this took kind of two different stories and put them together because you have the actor playing the person. And also liked learning the actor's process because, you know, we don't always get to see that type stuff. This is hyper realism as far as like, would actors take it this far? I think you're damn right they would. And I'm sure that it sometimes can lead to unethical levels like it does in this movie, but beautifully directed movie as well. And it's definitely one of those that's gonna stay with you. As a matter of fact, in the comments, let me know a movie that you watched that just, you could not get it out of your head from this year. I think this would be that movie. Number 8 is Air, the story about Michael Jordan and Nike and how that whole process came together. But this movie, I think, was really funny. It was heartwarming. It was educational to see how this whole process unfolded. But you had Matt Damon proving why he is one of the A-list actors working today because he is just so charismatic in this role. You love this character. And it just helps that it's based on a real person. And you got Ben Affleck playing a completely different type of character. You know, I think Ben Affleck does get a bad rap as far as acting goes, even though, you know, I think he's proven himself as a great director. But the performance he does in this movie is really interesting. But my favorite scene in the movie is definitely when Matt Damon, his character, has to sell himself to Michael Jordan when they're in the meeting room, the boardroom. You could hear a pin drop in the theater during that scene. Okay, number 7, Sound of Freedom. Oh my God, I know this one's gonna be controversial. Just because I said those words, some of my audience are gonna think, oh, he's that type of person. No, I'm not that type of person. Or maybe there's the type of person that I am, but it's not what you think. I'm a movie lover. That's it, plain and simple. There are people in this world, even critics. I'm a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. That's not me bragging, I'm just making a point. I am a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic. There are certain critics that refused to watch this movie, which I think is complete bullshit. I hate to call out my fellow critics, but any movie deserves its day, right? And so setting that aside, this movie to me was just a, you know, it was based on a true story. Are all Hollywood quote unquote true stories, you know, factual to the letter? Absolutely not. And I'm sure this movie wasn't either. I don't go to even true stories wanting to make sure that they get every single little thing right. Although that can be important, I was moved. Am I moved? Am I entertained? Do I laugh? Do I cry? That's why I go to movies. Sound of Freedom was fantastic. Watching this character put his life on the line to save children. It's crazy to me that a movie about saving children became political. And I already know that I'm gonna get people in the comments that are mad at me for even talking about this movie. And I don't get it. It's the weirdest thing. And you know, I guess I do get it. It's the day that we live in. 5 years ago, if this movie came out, it would be just a normal day. But because of the time we live in, certain movies have to be politicized, and I don't understand it. But I'm just gonna talk about the movie itself. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very moving and emotional. I'm not gonna lie, I did tear up. And I'll just say this, I've said it in the past, I'm not a political person. People get mad at me for even saying that. You have to be political? Fuck you. I don't have to be anything, all right? Never been a political type of person. I like movies. I've always loved movies, and that's just it, okay? I've alienated half my audience. I'm sorry. And you know what? To be fair, those that are pro this movie, those that are on that side of things, if you're just using this movie as a platform to get clicks, you're wrong too. You are an asshole, all right? So now I've pissed off everybody. Damn, that felt good. Okay, number 6, The Passenger. Kyle Gallner has really been impressing me over these past few years. As a matter of fact, after I watched this movie, I was like in a real, hard to say his name, Kyle Gallner. I was in a real Kyle Gallner mood, and I found this other movie, which right now, I can't remember the name of it, but if I remember, I'll put like a poster of it or something like that right here so you see. And I loved the hell out of it. Completely different movie. But The Passenger is a gripping thriller. Technically, I might have put this on my horror list, but I was on the line with it, kind of like I was with Godzilla, but you're not wrong either way. So I'm just gonna put it in this list. I like a movie with a dangerous person, and that's what Kyle was in this, his character. And he takes this young guy under his wing. Really, it's a guy getting stuck in a situation with a dangerous person, and you just feel horrible for him along the way. And the performances by the two leads in this are so good and gripping. It's just one of those movies too where you feel like there's no way this is gonna end well, right? You know, one of those type movies. But there's some shock value in here too. I'm not gonna even say where it is in the movie, but it was one of those scenes where I like stood up as I'm watching it, like, holy shit. You know, maybe I didn't stand up, but I freaked out. I did not see that coming at all. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Wow, okay, here we go. Number 5, The Killer. David Fincher is back. One of my all-time favorite directors. Hello, Fight Club, look at the shirt. This was a David Fincher movie. This was everything that I expected. Is it his best movie? No, but it's really interesting and really great, I think. Michael Fassbender gives such a commanding performance. And I like how at the beginning of the movie, it just kind of shows the mundane reality of being a sniper, an assassin. I love how this movie honed in on his code and how meticulous he was. And it's really the perfect vehicle for a David Fincher movie because that's who David Fincher is. He's very meticulous, and you know, he's the type of director that believes there's only one way to do a shot. You know, there's not 5 different ways. There's 100 ways that we're gonna try to explore, but we gotta find the exact one that we need for the scene. I love the method behind his madness, and it's evident in every movie that he does. But this one had a good amount of action, but it was more of just kind of a character study and following this character along the way, trying to, I guess, sort of avenge his loved one. But I think it's more than that. You know, this movie can be dissected too. So yeah, The Killer was amazing. Okay, number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. All 3 Guardians movies are top notch. I was kind of hard on the second movie, but I think when you watch this movie, if you didn't like the second movie, you will end up liking the second movie. Because by this time, you get what James Gunn is all about. And I think when I first saw Guardians Volume 2, and you're used to the MCU formula, Volume 2 feels so different than that. And so I didn't really, I guess, get it when I first watched it. But when I went back and watched it, because I was on this whole MCU run, because I was gonna rank them when Guardians 3 came out, I really appreciated Volume 2, but I also found it so damn refreshing when you mix it in with all the other MCU stuff, because a lot of it does feel kind of the same formula. I love that Kevin Feige gave James Gunn the creative freedom to do what he wants with his Guardians movies. And they are some of the best of the entire MCU. And Guardians 3, man, I love that it focused on Rocket Raccoon, and really all the Guardians, they seemed a little bit different and even more somber in this. It felt like a closing chapter along the way. Sure, there's some hilarious moments throughout, but I think this one definitely hits more of an emotional chord than the other two. Okay, number 3, John Wick. Is it chapter 4? We'll call it chapter 4. I think it's John Wick chapter 4. I think this is the best John Wick movie, and it's the longest, but I think it goes by really quick. I do think there are a couple of the action scenes that kind of linger on a little bit too long, like the one on the stairwell, but that's one scene. But this movie just feels so big, so epic. And we watch the John Wick movies really for like the locations, at least like the sequels. You know, the locations, the beautiful scenery. It seems like there's always a chance to up the ante on like the production design. They constantly get creative. And what interesting like locations can I put these characters and you know, to make it bigger and better. But also this one, it has a lot of different fighters outside of John Wick himself. I think they were even talking about a spinoff of one of the characters. I can't remember, but yeah, man, I just had a blast with John Wick chapter 4. I'm not so sure if we'll get a chapter 5. I'm sure we will eventually, but I think they're taking a break. But man, what a series, especially when you look back to how far we've come. Number 2, Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. I hate to be predictable. I know I got 2 superhero movies but they're really that good. And I think I just love these movies because not really the action, but the heart. Across the Spiderverse, I mean, first off, it's just beautifully orchestrated, beautifully directed, but also it's just got such a tight script, and you adore Miles Morales in this and his relationship with his parents. That's such a cool thing that's not really captured as much in the other Spider-Man movies. I mean, sure, in the first one you have Uncle Ben, but man, I tell you, as far as like properly using a multiverse right and tying it in effectively with the story, I think Across the Spider-Verse does it better than most. Because lately it seems like the multiverse thing has been wore out, and I was scared that knowing that it's going to be in here, it would kind of tarnish it a little bit, but it doesn't. It actually makes the story even stronger. It's essential to the story. So when you do see those moments from, say, other Spider-Man movies, you do get chill bumps. But I love that scene where Miles is running from all the other Spider-Men, and he's different. He's not even supposed to be Spider-Man. And that was such a cool revelation in the movie. Just that notion made him special. Freaking great score too, by the way. Number 1, Oppenheimer. And I was way late to the game in this one. I saw it when it came on digital. I remember everybody was trying to get the 4K because it kept selling out everywhere. I think it's pretty easy to get now. And then after I bought it, Universal actually sent me a copy of the 4K. You know, I guess Christopher Nolan wanted critics to actually watch this movie in the best quality possible. I love that about Christopher Nolan. He's a fighter for physical media. He's a fighter for shooting on film. And thank God we have filmmakers like Nolan and Quentin Tarantino that only use the format, because I love movies that are shot on film. I just watched Christmas Bloody Christmas recently, and that movie was shot on 16mm. And as I was watching that movie, I was just appreciating that this is being shot on a dying format, because there might be one day where movies aren't made on film anymore. It's already a niche format, even, you know, for directors. So I think we just need to appreciate that. But Oppenheimer is so damn interesting, the story of this conflicted character. I think, at least from the movie's point of view, when you're that intelligent, but you're in the middle of a process of making something, but you don't realize how dangerous it is until it's too late, and you have to keep it going. You know, in a weird way, this reminded me of, like, you know, the Miles Benedict Dyson section in Terminator 2. Although they came to him in the future after he had already created it. And I think Miles Benedict Dyson was sort of modeled after Oppenheimer. I don't know if he was, but, you know, you can see the connective tissue there. And I love that this movie made you question, is Oppenheimer really a bad guy? I mean, he created the freaking atomic bomb. But I think good people can make catastrophic things. And that's what makes this story so interesting. But man, Christopher Nolan loves to get an ensemble cast of great actors. I can't even name them all off. There are probably dozens of them in this movie. You're constantly like, doing that Leonardo DiCaprio thing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for so many actors, but they all have great pivotal roles and an interesting story. And nobody directs a movie like Nolan. He just has a certain panache about his direction, a rhythm about his direction. The music and the effects and how he always goes like the harder route to get something done. He doesn't take the easy road. And I think that's why his movies end up being as great as they are. There's just something special about his movies. So, man, Oppenheimer was amazing. 3-hour movie, and I've watched it twice already. And it just flies by every time. So those are my top 10 non-horror movies of 2023. Looking forward to seeing your list down in the comments. Let me know what your favorite was. But also be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, Review for Fridays. Follow me Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Drumdum out.